So, it's an interesting topic. And judging by what Mr. Makama had to say earlier, that's the challenge, I guess. What are we waiting for? Welcome. Nice to see you guys here. So, I started this off by saying once upon a time, a long, long time ago, in a country right here called South Africa, we've got our challenges, as Mr. Makama said earlier, and I think I had to sort of draw a little bit on what our state president said in his State of the Nation speech about the question, what are we called to do? Tumamina. So it's really for us to ask ourselves in these uncertain and turbulent times, as business leaders, as community members, what are we called to do? And I thought it was quite interesting. This is an age-old quote by Shakespeare from the play Hamlet, and it goes as follows. Time 'tis out of joint, O cursed spite, that ever I was born to put it right. Maybe I can repeat that. Time 'tis out of joint, O cursed spite, that ever I was born to put it right. And again, just drawing on the previous speaker, who very extensively spoke about the current challenges we have in this country, specifically relating to employment. What is it that we can do? There's definitely a sense, for me, at national government level, of trying to reverse some of the ills of the previous presidency. And it's really for us as business leaders, who, by the way, were very complicit in what happened over the last 10 years. So we've got to have a good look at ourselves and say, what is it that we need to do to build a sustainable country going forward? We also talk about deindustrialization, and as a manufacturer ourselves, it's a very real phenomenon around us. What can we do to reverse the trend and to create more employment? So again, the question, what are we waiting for? What we must understand in a modern complex, a modern industrialized economy tends to be very complex. And I think it is unfair to expect that government and parastatals in particular, and we heard from SABS earlier, who often are the ones that are writing policy and creating the regulatory framework, are doing it in a void without business participation. Often as business leaders or business communities, we have stood by somewhat cynically and been unsurprised when things fail, or at best hope that something will turn out better. So the challenge really is for us, as we're often told, is that small and medium business will be the ones that create employment. I mean, at the best of times, that's a tough job. And particularly, when there's a low growth environment in the mining sector, in the agricultural sector, and the retail space. So we start talking about things like Industry 4.0. We have a struggling education sector. So it's actually looking pretty harsh out there. So to be asked to create employment is a real challenge. What have we done at Multotec? One thing that we've done, and we've always been challenged ourselves when it comes to tough economic times. You can be overwhelmed by the media and what you read every day, or you can say, we're going out there, we're going to get market share. We're going to find where the business is. Right now, the hot topics, probably for the year or more, have been around cobalt, lithium. Some will say even some coal in certain areas. I don't know, some of you might have heard Roy yesterday talk about commodities. Iron ore in the Pilbara is flourishing. They're pushing record tons out. So we've always tried to follow the business where it is flourishing. And that has really been good for us. So whether it's in Northern Australia or South America or somewhere in the middle of the DRC, we've tried to find that business and build on that. So we've had to, at the same time, become more globally competitive. So our orientation into the export environment has made us more competitive. Having said that, we have to make sure that our home base, South Africa, is looked after. Any company that wants to be in the export space needs to ensure that they're a strong or a dominant player in their home market. So we have, over the years, tried as best we could, sometimes under somewhat onerous circumstances, complied with the legal or the regulatory environment that we're in, and seen that in certain cases as opportunities, and I'll refer to our local content verification in a minute. But I think the kind of pressures we're experiencing in this country are not unique. There are global players that are struggling as much as we do. One of the interesting learnings that we've had as we go into, particularly into developing economies, is the challenge that their politicians, their governments have with the social consequences of that very reality, right? These very same issues that we have in terms of creating employment, skills development, empowering local businesses, getting involved in SED programs. The kind of DNA that we built in the South African context, we get confronted in very many African contexts in other developing economies. And we have to take a pragmatic stance to working in that environment. And I think it's worked for us. I think we've taken a very positive, proactive role. And I'm glad to say a lot of our initiatives in Africa have been successful as a result of that. The one thing that we get excited about, and Frank Makama spoke earlier about the local content assessment. And as he mentioned as well, we're sitting in a draft mining charter. So it's not a final draft. We hope that by end of November, it'll be published and create some regulatory stability, which is absolutely necessary. So we've taken the risk of having ourselves assessed as the first company in this country on a local content. The threshold is pretty high, 60% on a sort of standard bill of material, which includes your labor, factory overheads, and material costs. We've assessed 13 of our product families and have passed 13 of our product families. In fact, there's a certificate outside. I have a slide in a minute that I'll show you. We're very proud to say that we have the certificate, and in fact the local mining companies have already engaged with us very proactively from their side to understand how it was done. Because the initial challenge was you can go backwards and forwards on the bureaucratic way of assessing, and we've figured out, and we've been obviously in running this prototype with the SABS, we've managed to come about with a pragmatic solution to the problem. Assessing every product at a product level is impossible, but going to the high level of assessing the content on an income statement is just too broad. So we've helped influence that methodology, and we believe it can be done, and we believe that the SABS is really ideally positioned to be able to manage that process. So we're proud to say that our 13 product families have been assessed as local content, and it really is something that we believe in. It is going to create local jobs. We really do believe it is necessary from a socioeconomic point of view to drive local manufacturing up. If the mining economy can grow, we all benefit from it. But as supplies to the mining economy, the more they can demand from us to create local manufacturing jobs, the better for all of us. I think Frank Makama made that point very clear. So it is really for us as business leaders, together with government and labor, to come up with ways and means of practically making these policies work. And I do believe there's a willingness from government to go through that process. So we must take the opportunity, we must take our responsibility as business leaders seriously and get involved with this process. I really do believe we can make a difference. We don't have to wait for an invitation. Who are we waiting for? There's always saying, are we waiting for another Mandela to rescue us? It is for us to rescue ourselves. We don't need another invitation. We don't need to wait for anybody. The time is now. We can take that next step. Thank you very much.